No one saw it coming, but George Russell's future at Mercedes might not be as certain as fans believed. While it looked like the team had completely moved on from the idea of signing Max Verstappen, recent developments suggest otherwise. This brings an interesting twist to Russell's current position, especially as whispers grow louder about him heading to Aston Martin. The 2026 season isn't even here yet, but it's already stirring drama, with Russell and Verstappen becoming key figures in all the major headlines. Verstappen, a four-time world champion, has shown signs of frustration with Red Bull's current progress, opening a window for rivals to approach him. And guess who's first in line? Mercedes. The Brackley-based team has always been viewed as a strong option for Verstappen if he ever left Red Bull. And Russell? Well, he's caught right in the middle of it all. His recent comments hint that while he's not opposed to Verstappen joining the team, he also knows that it might cost him his seat. Even winning the Canadian Grand Prix hasn't sealed his place. Despite his performance, the top names at Mercedes are still weighing their choices. So, if Russell were to be pushed out, where could he go? One of the most talked about possibilities is Aston Martin. According to insiders, the team has been watching Russell closely and has already identified him as a top target for 2026. His statements have become more careful lately, especially when asked how his win in Montreal affects his contract talks. Russell himself addressed this by saying, "It doesn't hurt my talks with Mercedes, not at all. I'm not worried about next year. I'll be on the grid, and I feel like I'm driving at my best." That kind of confidence shows that he's not just focused on the next contract, he's focused on proving his worth every race weekend. And that brings us to the big question. Is Toto Wolff really planning to bring in Verstappen, or is this a strategy to pressure Russell? Because if Mercedes does decide to part ways with Russell, you can bet Aston Martin will be ready to welcome him. Russell's position at Mercedes seems stable on the surface, especially after his win in Canada and the impressive form he's shown this season. But behind the scenes, it's anything but clear. Even with a strong drive and Antonelli's P3 finish backing up Mercedes' current lineup, there's a feeling that the team's focus might be shifting elsewhere, possibly back toward Verstappen. This isn't just speculation. George's recent comments hint at a calm exterior, but his words tell a bigger story. He said, "I'm enjoying racing, taking it week by week. I know I've got more to give, and I'm ready to fight for titles." It sounds confident, even hopeful, but there's an edge to it. He knows something's up. And the person with the power to change everything, Toto Wolff. The team boss hasn't been in a rush to lock George in for the future, which speaks volumes. If Mercedes was fully committed to him, the deal would already be signed. But the delay might be tied to Verstappen's future being in the air. If Max becomes available, Mercedes will want to keep the door open. That's where Aston Martin enters the conversation again. While it might have sounded like a long shot before, it's now a real possibility. Aston Martin is heading into a new era. Their partnership with Mercedes will shift, but their ambition is growing. They're no longer just aiming to compete, they want to win. And someone like Russell could be the piece they need. Of course, bringing him in would shake up things internally. Fernando Alonso is still there, and he isn't just any driver, he's a two-time world champion and one of the sharpest minds in the paddock. But even he would understand that time doesn't wait. He might not have planned to leave so soon, but for a long-term gain, changes must be made. This could work out well for all parties. Alonso exits on his own terms. Russell steps into a leading role and Aston Martin gains a skilled, proven racer who's hungry for a real championship shot. Meanwhile, Mercedes would move forward with Verstappen, a name that guarantees attention, performance, and pressure in equal measure. But will this be how things unfold? The pieces are moving, and every decision from now on could rewrite the story of Formula One's next big era. Russell's recent words during a media briefing raised more questions than they answered. When asked directly if he had locked in his future with Mercedes, his reply was simple: "No, it's not confirmed." He emphasized that he wasn't talking to other teams, but he didn't exactly rule them out either. According to him, his priority is to remain with Mercedes. After all, they're the team that gave him his big break into Formula One. But the tone? It didn't sound entirely secure. It felt more like someone trying to stay composed in a situation he can't fully control. His loyalty is clear, but in this business, loyalty doesn't always guarantee a seat, especially when a name like Verstappen is floating around the paddock. Russell acknowledged as much. "Why wouldn't every team be interested in Max?" he said. And he's right. Verstappen's availability, no matter how limited, shifts the balance across the entire grid. When a four-time world champion shows the slightest sign of being open to a new project, every major team will at least test the waters. And this explains the current pause in Mercedes' negotiations with George. The Brackley outfit isn't in a hurry. That can either mean they're confident in what they already have, or they're waiting for a bigger move. Toto Wolff himself admitted that they're working on a timeline and aren't rushing to settle things. On paper, it sounds like planning, but in Formula One, delays often mean something big is brewing. It's easy to understand George's position. He stepped up in every challenge, first at Williams, then as Lewis Hamilton's teammate, and now as the leading man since Hamilton's departure. But now that he's finally starting to shine, it feels like the team might be preparing to pivot. That's why the Aston Martin opportunity feels so relevant. If Mercedes is hesitant, Aston could be ready. The Silverstone-based team is entering a pivotal chapter, and Russell could be the centerpiece of it. He's not just fast, he's sharp, consistent, and unafraid to speak up when needed. He could very well become the face of the new Aston Martin. And even though Aston Martin and Mercedes are on different paths for 2026, they share one major goal: winning. With the right driver lineup and the right development plan, Aston Martin could easily step up. Russell, paired with Honda power and the influence of Newey's recent arrival, could spark a dramatic rise. It's not just about where Russell might go, it's also about what he's proven so far. Look at his win in Canada. That wasn't a lucky break or a fluke. It was a demonstration of what he can do when the car delivers even halfway decent performance. The W16 wasn't expected to dominate, yet George extracted everything possible and brought it home with confidence and control. And it's not just that one race. Before the Canada Grand Prix, Russell had already been one of the most consistent performers on the grid. Regular top 5 finishes, solid qualifying performances, and a calm head in high-pressure situations. All of it adds up. Even in the driver's standings, he's sitting at a strong 4th position, trailing Oscar Piastri by just over 50 points. That's not exactly a championship fight, but it's far better than what most predicted at the season's start. This form is why Aston Martin is showing so much interest. They see what Russell is becoming, not just a fast driver, but a possible team leader. And with Fernando Alonso's future uncertain and likely to end sooner than expected, a seat could soon open up. Alonso's career is nothing short of legendary, but even legends have to consider timing. If this was about Max Verstappen, perhaps the conversation would already be over. But for Russell, it's a matter of strategic fit. Aston Martin needs someone who can lead through a period of transition, someone young but experienced, aggressive but calculating. Russell fits that bill almost perfectly. Convincing Alonso to step aside won't be easy, but let's be realistic. His exit is inevitable. Whether it's 2026 or a year later, Aston Martin is preparing for life after Fernando. That's where Russell becomes essential. They want someone ready to make a long-term impact, especially with the looming technical regulation changes. As for Lance Stroll, his position is unlikely to change. His presence is largely tied to Lawrence Stroll's vision for the team. While Lance hasn't exactly delivered standout performances, he's not expected to leave either. That leaves one clear path: bringing in George Russell and pairing him with Stroll. And from Aston's perspective, that setup provides a strong mix. One driver with raw potential and deep hunger for success, and another with the financial and family backing to keep the project stable. For Russell, this could be the clean slate he didn't know he needed. No longer under the shadow of Hamilton. No longer in a holding pattern waiting for Mercedes to decide his fate. Instead, he'd be the lead figure in a team pushing hard to reach the front of the grid. Now, the bigger question is, can Russell actually lead a team like Aston Martin into a new era of Formula One? The potential is there. He's matured quickly, shown leadership qualities, and most importantly, he's proven that when given the tools, he can get results. With new power unit regulations coming in 2026 and Aston Martin's partnership with Honda kicking off, the timing couldn't be more perfect. Let's not overlook Adrian Newey either. His presence adds massive value. Since Newey started showing up trackside, the shift in Aston Martin's development approach has been noticeable. Just in the last 3 races, they've picked up valuable points, especially in Barcelona and Canada, despite operating with a car that's far from the sharp end of the grid. That tells you something. This team isn't standing still. They're thinking 2 steps ahead. By the time 2026 comes around, Aston Martin could be one of the most prepared outfits to hit the ground running with the new regulations. And with Russell at the wheel, they wouldn't just be building a competitive car, they'd be building a contender around a driver who's hungry to prove something. And what about Verstappen? The truth is, he'll always be the top choice for every team. If he becomes available, you can bet Mercedes will do everything in their power to bring him in. That's why Russell's position at Mercedes is shaky, not because he isn't good enough, but because Verstappen is considered a generational talent. That's also why Aston Martin can't afford to hesitate. If they wait too long, they might lose their chance to secure Russell before Mercedes makes up its mind. And for George, the clock is ticking. This year is his window to send a message to everyone that he's ready, that he's capable, and that he's more than just a placeholder until someone else signs the dotted line. So where will George Russell be in 2026? Will he stay loyal to Mercedes, hoping for a final confirmation, or will he grab the opportunity to lead a rising force and write his own chapter with Aston Martin? One thing's for sure, he won't be short of offers. What happens next may not just shape his career, it could define the next era of Formula One altogether.